Luis Robert came to the Chicago White Sox organization as a teenager with tons of talent and fanfare. The White Sox had their future center fielder locked down for close to a decade. Robert is a multi-tool player that has superstar potential, but like so many other White Sox players, just can't seem to stay healthy. He had a variety of injuries that limited his 2022 season, and the final images of him swinging a bat with one hand were hard to watch. Can 2023 be the year of Luis Robert?
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sox. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong diehard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Really appreciate you letting me steal some of your time to talk off-season White Sox. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Luis Robert has missed a lot of baseball the last few seasons, but when he's healthy, he's one of the most dangerous hitters in the lineup. His speed and athleticism have already helped to earn him a gold glove in the outfield. Robert is a difference maker and needs to find a way to stay on the field. Folks, if you missed the 2022 season somehow, some way, and are just now checking in on Locked On White Sox, you missed an 81-81 season from our Sox, second place in the AL Central, finished 11 games back of the Cleveland Guardians. We celebrated the 17th anniversary of the Sox winning it all in the previous episode. The day after the White Sox won the World Series, October 27th, I took the day off from work and went over to Sports Authority. Maybe you did this as well. And I stood in line and waited for the merchandise to show up. And I was definitely not the only one. That place was packed. The line stretched all the way around the store. It even bled outside. If it commemorated the World Series, I had to have it. Hats, shirts, sweatshirts, license plate holders, bumper stickers, pennants, magazines. I've got the game Monopoly, the World Series edition of Monopoly, the 2005 White Sox winning it all. I have not even opened it up yet. I have it somewhere tucked away. Bottle opener. Did you have one of these that had John Rooney's call to end the game? And a pizza cutter. I put that on Twitter yesterday. That also had some audio as you were using it. So many other items. The holiday season was not far away, so lots of opportunities to give and receive White Sox World Series gear. I definitely still wear the shirts and sweatshirts that are 17 years old. Chicago White Sox managerial search 2022. Sox are still looking to hire the manager that will hopefully help bring another World Series to the South Side. I had talked in the previous episode, maybe with the Yankees losing the way they did to the Houston Astros, that the Yankees would part ways with Aaron Boone. Sounds like Aaron Boone, though, is staying put. Aaron Boone will be back as Yankees manager in 2023, according to owner Hal Steinbrenner. This is what he had to say, quote, "As far as Boone's concerned, we just signed him, and for all the same reasons I listed a year ago, I believe he is a very good manager. I don't see a change there," end quote. I thought personally maybe the Yankees would move on and turn their focus to maybe Joe Espada. Of course, the Rangers and Marlins have made their choices. The Kansas City Royals have yet to hire a new skipper. Royals have conducted first interviews with 3 coaches in their system for the team's managerial job. Bench coach Pedro Grifol, the third base coach Vance Wilson, and AAA Omaha manager Scott Thorman. Rays bench coach Matt Quatraro also has interviewed. Now, of course, Grifol and Quatraro were on the White Sox radar, and maybe they still are. Lots of buzz on social media over Phillies hitting coach Kevin Long being of major interest to the White Sox as the next manager. Long, before coming to the Phillies, Kevin Long, he was the hitting coach for the Yankees, Mets, and Nationals. Long has interviewed for open managerial positions in the past, but has never managed in the big leagues. Sox obviously need some offensive help, and maybe Kevin Long can bring whatever he has done for Philadelphia to Chicago. But he obviously will not be able to bring Harper, Schwarber, Castellanos, and others. I'd be very surprised if Kevin Long got the job, but it sure sounds like the White Sox are kicking the tires just about everywhere. I feel like if it was going to be Quatraro or Grifol, and then the announcement would have happened already. Same goes for Guillen. Espada and Long are both obviously involved in the World Series, which starts on Friday, and that could be the holdup. Whoever comes in as the 41st manager in White Sox history, they will inherit a talented group of players, and Luis Robert might be the most exciting of the group. The Chicago White Sox added to their core their young crop of prospects when they signed Robert in 2017. I'm going to tell you why he is so dangerous. More on that in a moment. Dress shirts are tricky. It's hard to find one that fits right while also being comfortable and matches your style. Plus, with all the hustle and bustle you got going on, you need a dress shirt that looks good enough to get the deal done at work, but is comfortable enough to play catch with your kid after dropping him off at practice. The dress shirt was due for a radical reinvention, and Roan stepped up to the challenge. Roan's commuter shirt is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible shirt known to man, and here's why. Mobility is everything. Roan's comfortable 4-way stretch fabric provides breathability and flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy what life throws your way, from your commute to work to your 18 holes of golf. Looking good is easy. It's time to feel confident with a wrinkle-free shirt without the hassle. With Roan's wrinkle release technology, wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the shirt. It's that easy. Odor-free tech. With Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long. And on top of that, Roan is 100% machine washable, so you can ditch the dry cleaner altogether. The commuter shirt can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to roan.com/lockedon to use promo code LOCKEDON to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to Roan, RHONE.com/lockedon and use the code LOCKEDON. Luis Robert is an absolute difference maker. When he's healthy and swinging with 2 hands, he provides danger in the Chicago White Sox lineup. He can make everybody around him better in that lineup because of the fear he will put into an opposing pitcher. When he's right, he could take a breaking ball that doesn't break and hit it to the moon. His power is effortless, and his ability to close the gap on fly balls is unmatched. Robert is a multi-tool player, but does the White Sox no good on the injured list. And boy, when he is not in the lineup, the White Sox just feel different, don't they? The White Sox officially signed Luis Robert in late May of 2017. The Cuban star was 19 years old and was already being compared to Mike Trout. Talk about pressure. 4 months prior, the White Sox began the great rebuild. So to have this kind of talent in the organization, along with Moncada and Kopech, was a huge deal, not to mention Cease and Jimenez in just a few more months. During these days of the rebuild, all eyes were on Birmingham and Charlotte. It was an exciting time to be a White Sox fan. So much talent in the pipeline. How could the White Sox not be the jewel of the American League for years to come? After the 2019 season, there was a lot of anticipation surrounding Luis Robert and his potential role with the 2020 team. Would the Sox keep him in Charlotte to start off the year to gain more control down the line? On January 2nd of 2020, our questions were answered. The White Sox signed Luis Robert to a 6-year, $50 million extension. Robert broke out in 2019 as he slashed .328, .376, .624 with 32 home runs in 122 games across 3 minor league levels, including a 47-game stint at AAA to end the year. With the extension, Luis Robert will be on the White Sox for a long time. There are team options for 2026 and 2027. Robert will only be 29 years old when the contract is up. Luis Robert could very well be a centerpiece for many years to come with the White Sox. Obviously, the 2020 season was nothing like what we anticipated. However, Robert played 56 of the 60 games, slashed .233, .302, .436, hit 11 home runs, and had 31 RBIs. Robert won a Gold Glove that year and received Rookie of the Year votes. Robert struggled to get acclimated to big league pitching. No surprise there, especially with the off-speed stuff, something that he still works on today. But when I think of Luis Robert, I can't help but think about that absolute missile he hit in the playoffs against Oakland that year. When he is right, he is a very dangerous man. The 2021 season brought so much hope and promise for the White Sox. How could they build on their first playoff appearance in 12 years? Luis Robert was going to be a major part of the experience until he suffered a torn hip flexor in early May. It was a Sunday game. I remember watching as Robert was helped off the field. The crowd absolutely silent. Robert only played in 68 games in 2021. He did eventually return, but it just felt like a season was wasted. What did we learn from Luis Robert in 2022? I'm going to tell you why it was a disastrous ending to a difficult year. More on that in a moment. During this past season, the injury bug bit Robert big time. Throughout the season, he dealt with a hand-wrist issue, COVID, blurred vision, and a groin injury. Robert played in 98 games for the Sox in 2022. He slashed .284, .319, .426. He only had 12 home runs and 56 RBIs. He was a base-stealing threat for a while, but it felt like the White Sox were not willing to see him get hurt sliding head first until he eventually did. Towards the end of the season is when things get really bizarre for Luis Robert. On August 12th, Robert sprained his wrist sliding into second base and then was hit by a pitch on September 6th. He clearly had an injured hand or wrist, but was still being put in the lineup. Was it the coaching staff or was it Robert that was forcing the issue, saying that he was all right to play? His swings did not look right, and several at-bats we saw Robert swing with one hand. Was he doing more damage to the injury? The Sox eventually stopped letting him hit and used him as a defensive replacement and pinch runner until the Guardians swept the Sox and the playoff chances were microscopic. White Sox put Robert on the shelf on September 24th, and another disappointing season was wrapped up. Here's what GM Rick Hahn had to say on the matter. Quote, given the fact the discomfort seems to be persisting, I think you've all seen it at various at-bats and games have gone on. The way games have played out the past week, we feel it's best to just shut him down, get him completely healthy. Unfortunately, I think the hit by pitch was a real factor, given that it was what we originally dealing with, a sprain and wrist, and repetitive use was going to be a challenge over time while you're ramping back up. So it's conceivable, had he not been hit by a pitch, it would have started barking at some point. But certainly getting hit accelerated the pain response in that area. It is something over the passage of time should resolve itself, and we don't foresee any issues coming next spring, end quote. That was a very long response by Rick Hahn for him simply saying it was problematic for Robert for a while, and we just needed to stop playing him. There is no doubt that Luis Robert can be one of the most exciting players on the White Sox, and maybe the entire league. After 3 seasons, however, I still don't think we truly know what we have in Luis Robert. He can do it all. He just can't seem to stay healthy. Luis Robert shouldn't have a problem putting up 35 home runs or more and 100 RBIs if he could just play in 140 games. To have a Gold Glove center fielder that can also be absolute danger in the lineup is the dream, and the Sox have that. They have it for a long time. Now we just need Robert to actually prove it. Folks, thank you so very much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcasts. We are on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up on the next episode, I'll continue to look at player performances like Gavin Sheets and examine off-season White Sox scenarios. Hey, really appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski, and until next time, go Sox.